Hello everyone, welcome here again to the second season of this show that I create for YouTube with each one of my friends who are colleagues in Magic and Witchcraft. For tonight, I invite my friend Hector Salva, very well known in the community as Houngan Hector. Uh, he wrote a couple of books that are available now in the market. One about Dominican Voodoo and another one about Puerto Rican Mediumship. It's a very good, interesting perspective because he has both sides here about his own background. Hector Salva is an expert on this matter. He's the most qualified person to talk about this. I am very grateful to have this conversation with him. So welcome, Hector. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you for having me here on your show with you.
Yes, has been a minute. We thought, we have had a lot of interactions in the past years in social media, but we don't sit to talk about something from 2 years ago in 2020. You was promoting on that moment your past book, the 21 Divisions, Mysteries and Magic of Dominican Voodoo. Has been 2 years from that, and now you have a new book on the market. Uh, Tell me, when do you remember that time with that book that you made about Dominican Voodoo? How do you feel that? How do you see that in retrospective? How was that experience for you?
It was actually really good. I love the experience mainly because I like the fact that we finally got to put information about the 21 divisions Dominican Voodoo on in some form of writing because a lot of the other magical traditions from the Caribbean have lots of books or writing about them, but our tradition didn't. So it was a really beautiful process. The publisher was really good with me. They were easy to work with, easy to get along with. The only one thing is I would like the publisher to go ahead and let me publish the book in Spanish, considering it is Dominican voodoo. Um,
I know the feeling.
so outside of that, though, the process has been really beautiful. A lot of people have contacted me. I did a lot of shows. We got to really put the 21 divisions out there more and more people aware of this tradition that in the Caribbean everybody knows it's there, but outside of the Caribbean very few people knew about it.
Yes, and this is very good because I remember I told you this before. When you refer to 21 divisions in another conversation with another person, they just say, "Oh, that's something that Dominican people does," but nobody has like a tool, like the real information about it. And when you made this book, you dry yourself in there, and you put all this information, each one of the divisions, one by one, with a whole explanation about their background, their history, uh, how is the culture around all of this, and was a very great book. I remember that everybody really liked it. I really enjoyed the book. I really enjoyed the information because it was very clear, was very easy to digest, and was incredibly complex. You have so much information in there for everybody, and independently of the country from where you come, when you read it, you always find something like someone related to you. Like I told you, oh, you have Shango here and we have Shango in Venezuela. We have a similar relation in there, but it's very nice to have a different perspective from someone who really practice the tradition, who really is in there. Because without your book, we don't have really too much information. It's just some blogs and around, and it's not really complete information about, especially because it's not people who is inside of the tradition. So it's not really accurate information like in your book. Now, in 2022, you have this new book that is out now, that is Espiritismo, Puerto Rican Mediumship and Magic. Again, with Weiser Books. Tell me about this book, because in the other one was Dominican Voodoo, now is Puerto Rican Mediumship. Tell me about this.
Okay, so I'm Dominican and Puerto Rican. So I originally started the spiritual path learning Espiritismo before eventually I was in the 21 divisions. Espiritismo always holds a very close place to my heart because it's the foundation for lots of spiritual things, and lots of spiritual and magical traditions have drawn off of Espiritismo, or there's aspects of Espiritismo that influence even paganism, Wicca, and New Age practices were influenced by Espiritismo. Espiritismo also gives us the science of the spirit. What I mean by that is how the spiritual world works. So it really gives us clarifying, easy to understand information about how these things work, why they work a certain way. And with that foundation, and because of that foundation, is what I've always used as a guide in my spiritual growth and development. If you have a proper foundation spiritually, you become a person who is not only strong, but also a person that's not easy for other people to take advantage of, right? So I was really excited to put this book out because Espiritismo, Puerto Rican Espiritismo in particular, has slowly been basically dying away as time goes on with the culture. And this is partially because Puerto Rico is a part of the United States. So there's a lot of cross going on between the two. And little by little, Puerto Rican Espiritismo has been kind of fading away. And so this was my opportunity to put, again, information in writing about a tradition that had never been really written about before. Specifically, a lot of times when we find information about Espiritismo, it's very much Cuban Espiritismo, which is connected with Santeria.
Yeah.
And so Puerto Rican Espiritismo, on the other hand, you don't really find anything about it. And I knew, and for like the past 20 years, I have been receiving lots of requests from people to write a book on Espiritismo. So I was really excited to finally put it out and get this information out there so that as time goes on, it doesn't get lost from, what we know spiritually.
Yes. I repeat this speech many times that some people don't like news on witchcraft because they think that we don't have something new to say. But I remember that when we refer to spiritualists or spiritists, or when people look for books about spiritismo, usually they go for the typical books of Allan Kardec, who was a very great book. But it's important to remember also the cultural difference because he was a person from a different country. Those books were poorly translated, and also he no was a spiritualist, he no was a spiritist, he no was a real practitioner, he was some kind of occultist who was impressed for all of this work. He go to different places, he take assistance from different spirits, he learned a lot of techniques and rituals and crafts, but he was more like giving a journal about his experience in the learning process, and not was a person who was really initiating something, who passed years and years of practice giving you accurate information. Was a totally different perspective. Now we are looking for this kind of books, and you are giving us that kind of books, and we really appreciate that because we really don't have that information. What we must have is oral folklore, is oral traditions. Like you mentioned before, in Venezuela, we have Santeria, Lucumi, Candomblé is very strong in Venezuela and Brazil. But there's a lot of influence from Cuban magic and Cuban spiritualism in there. We probably are taking parts of Puerto Rican magic and Dominican Voodoo, and we don't know because if someone just travel, learn something, come back and say, oh, this is part of the ritual, but we are not really sure about it. And when you put this right down, we can really identify the cultural difference, the source, the origin of every ritual, of every practice, of every part of the craft. And that is very important, especially in these times when we are talking so much about cultural appropriation, about how important is giving back to all different cultures, and that's super important. Hector, which for you could be different from witchcraft or brujeria? Which could be for you the meanings or the meaning of spiritismo?
Okay, so for me, the meaning of Espiritismo, it has witchcraft, it has brujeria, it has magic within it. But aside from that, the meaning of Espiritismo is about evolving the human spirit, about healing and receiving what we need as humans in order to evolve ourselves spiritually to get closer to the divine and to become more one with the divine. And when oftentimes we think of enlightenment, unity with the divine, we all often think of like Hinduism, Buddhism, Hindu traditions. But the truth is that here in the West, within the learning and the training of Espiritismo, we also have the whole enlightenment purpose within our work. It's one that may often get lost at times with all of the magic, right? Sometimes magic can be a little, it's fun. It's bright colors, there's all this stuff to work with, lots of stuff to learn. But another purpose of Espiritismo was always evolución, as we call it in Spanish, evolution, and evolution of the human spirit so that it unites and becomes one with God. So to me, Espiritismo is the science of the spirits and the science of how the spiritual world works, how the universe works, how the various spiritual realms work and affect us as well as we affect them. So that was one of the main things that's really different from Puerto Rican Espiritismo versus other forms of Espiritismo, in that it still kept that sector of work very much alive and very much a major component of the work. And like you mentioned, Venezuela, a lot of things traveled back and forth and everywhere within the islands as well as South America. So, for example, in Venezuela, they have a spirit known as Negro Felipe, who's really popular in Venezuela. One thing that people don't know about Negro Felipe is that prior to ending up in Venezuela, Negro Felipe lived for some years in Puerto Rico. He was originally on the slave ship to go to Venezuela, somehow escaped, was able to live in Puerto Rico for some time, and then eventually made it down to Venezuela, where he actually became a spirit guide and recognized for his work. And then eventually that all returned again back to Puerto Rico when the Venezuelan people had elevated Negro Felipe, and the Puerto Rican people recognized him, and it got incorporated into Espiritismo. So there's definitely a lot of crisscross that goes in with all of our traditions, and sometimes it can be difficult to understand where things come from. And then, like you also mentioned, Allan Kardec. A lot of people think of Allan Kardec as like, I don't know, a big spirit guide within the work. However, Allan Kardec was really a researcher, right? Like you said, he did the research, but he went to mediums who were the actual ones communicating with the spirits. And so it was in a French culture, a French Christian based culture, with Christian Catholic based culture, which meant that the way that they developed that Espiritismo is different than the ways our Espiritismo developed in Puerto Rico as well as the rest of the islands, which had other cultures and other spiritualities which were major influences. And so when people think of Espiritismo, they think of Allan Kardec, but what we practice in Puerto Rico isn't really Kardashian Espiritismo. It has a few elements of Kardashian Espiritismo, but it's really a different thing than what is the Kardecist is practicing, or the Kardashian Espiritista is practicing. The Kardashian Espiritista is more working towards research, whereas we want results in our life and we want to basically have the spiritual experience. So it's two very different things. And the truth is that our tradition isn't so much founded or has a foundation in Kardec. Rather, a lot of the terminology, the terms, the words that Kardec used, we absorbed and we started using those words because they were acceptable. and we were allowed to use them, and we weren't going to face religious discrimination for them.
Wow, now you see why we love you so much, why we adore you so much. We need more of you. Thank you for all of this information. Um, my next question, jumping here, is going back to your book, but thank you for all of the information that you are giving us. I'm learning a lot with you in every talk that we have. Uh, how was the process of this book for you? Because I ask this because we are in a very competitive market. It's so many authors, it's so much information. And then you come back from 2 years ago with that book about Dominican Voodoo that goes very well, and you offer a book about Puerto Rican Mediumship, Espiritismo. How was this process for you? Because it's entirely different to everything else that we have in the market.
Yeah. So first thing is that it was really long because of the COVID and everything else, right? This book has actually been almost like it, for as far as me is concerned, it was ready like a year ago. But the publishing process is a really long process, right? So that part was really long. However, so far I've received a really warm welcome. A lot of people are really excited about it. A lot of people are really happy. I received a huge outpouring of support from my Puerto Rican brothers and sisters from the Puerto Rican community. The same as when I wrote the 21 Divisions, I had a lot of people from the Dominican Republic and a lot of Dominicans writing me in support of having finally put the book out. So it was really great in the fact that I got a lot of my people who were like, yay, finally, finally, finally. And I love to hear when people are getting the resources that they need. And I've had a lot of support. For me, I find it that it's actually been really enjoyable process. I just like seeing that people are getting what they need and that things are not lost forever, and or people who have been looking for it forever are finally able to go ahead and have a resource that they can use. So I've enjoyed the entire process of like putting out this book and being able to honor both sides of my heritage and my ancestry as well.
Yes, that's great, and it's very important. I mean, you could do another book easier. You could do just a book on spell work like everybody does. But you really take these very complicated topics that has a lot about history, about geography, about culture, about appropriation, about colonialism, about so many things, and you put all of this together in a magnificent book. It's out everywhere with a very big publisher. It's super nice to have the opportunity to meet you, to have the opportunity to read you, to have the opportunity to learn from you. I really like that. You mentioned 2020. That's my next question. How was 2020 for you?
Okay. So 2020 was definitely interesting. Um, you know, for people who are mystics or spiritual, we tend to spend a lot of time by ourselves anyway. I think that it's a thing with spiritual people because we do look on the inside. So, very often, many of us spend a lot of time at home or by ourselves in smaller groups. So, that really didn't affect me. However, it was interesting to watch like how the world kind of lost their head about it all, and that was interesting to see, as well as like how much division was created amongst people over like how people felt about this versus that, and et cetera, and where people lied. And it also showed to me basically how many issues people have in the world right now, right? Kind of like it brought everything to the surface for a lot of people.
Right.
So a lot of things, a lot of issues that were being hidden, that were being kept in the dark, came out into the light and got brought forward for people, and people had to deal with them. So I think that it's been a very healing process for the world. I've enjoyed it so far. it's definitely not fun wearing the mask, but you got to do what you got to do and be safe. But outside of that, I feel as though, other than, not making it to some in-person events here and there that I would have liked to go to, it really was an enjoyable year. I think that it showed a lot of people what's important.
Yes.
And it showed a lot of people like basically what can be done and what can't be done, and how many excuses or various ways that the government hasn't been really trying to help the people for so long, and how easily they could have helped people. If they can do it during that season, they can do it. So I think that that was beautiful in exposing all of that.
I share exactly the same feeling about everything that you are saying. That was a year of lessons, which in your new book, in Espiritismo, Puerto Rican Mediumship and Magic, do you think that is the most important lesson that you want that people keep when they are reading the book or after read the book?
The most important lesson that I want people to understand in reading the book is how the spiritual world works, how magic works, as well as how the spiritual realms work. I think a lot of people, if they had that foundational knowledge, it would avoid for many people a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that don't make sense, as well as being taken advantage of. If you can really comprehend how the spirit world works, how magic works, etc., then it's going to cause a lot less problems when you start either doing magic, or for my magical practitioners, I want the book to help them in the sense that, people who come to you who have read the book having a better understanding of what you do. And so you're going to have less stress and problems working with that person because they actually understand what you're doing for them and how it works. A lot of people, when it comes to magic, they have unrealistic expectations. And a lot of people, when it comes to magic, they almost think of it more like if they haven't been in the magical community or they're not magical practitioners themselves, they think of it more like waving a wand and Cinderella and very Disney-like, right? And a lot of time is spent by spiritual workers or magical practitioners explaining to people, no, this is how it works. Or no, actually, this is what to expect. And also, a lot of people end up upsetted because they don't understand how it works or why it works or how it should work, etc. So I think that the book is great for magical practitioners, for the people that they end up having to work with, as well as maybe getting a few pieces of information that may put the puzzle together better for them, as well as for non-magical people who are just trying to understand how the spiritual world works, how magic works, etc., or anyone trying to get help from a professional witch or a professional magician, so that when they come in, they're coming in with some reality, right? And they're coming in with a clear idea of like, what can I really expect? What can be done? What can't be done? What's real? What's not real? What's kind of just in the movies. So I think that that's very important, and it's a big part of the book, and a big part of the lesson is how does the spiritual world work? And the beauty about Espiritismo is that it's across the board, meaning truth is across the board, right? Salt is salty. Whether you go to India, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, or Canada, if you eat some salt, it's going to taste salty, right? Or if you eat a lime, it's going to be sour, or a lemon, it's going to be sour. So truth is across the board. So a big part of what I explain in the book is the truth about how spirituality works, how the spiritual realms work, how magic works. So whether you go to a magical practitioner who practices Spiritismo, or maybe paganism, or maybe some other form of magic, you have an understanding. And while the clothing they may wear is different, the essence is the same.
Wow. This is not an interview, this is a whole class. Hector, this is, I know that you are in tradition, traditions are very close, but in your personal tradition after this 2020, how do you feel this change or evolve or adapt to the new times?
So I think that in this time of 2020, I've definitely adapted, which I was actually already planning to pre-2020, and using Zoom and computers a lot more. I now offer like so that people can participate from at to ceremonies from far away, and they're able to zoom in, etc. And I think that it's caused all magical practitioners to adapt. However, I also feel that most magical practitioners were very adaptable. So I don't think that it upset us too much. We tend to be, all magical practitioners that I know tend to be very creative and very open-minded. And so I think that this has actually opened up different opportunities or different ways of working that prior to this, people didn't need to do, and so we didn't. But now it's created us to open up new avenues and new ways of working, new ways of doing things that maybe we haven't previously thought before.
Got it. Uh, so, Hector, to end here, any message, any thought that you want to share with every one of your followers, readers, fans, stalkers like me?
Well, my whole message, I think my whole life was like you only have one life and you only have so much time. Money you can get more. Food you can get more. Houses you can get more. Spend your time in your life enjoying your life. Make it a time where you have people around you that you love and that love you. Make your life enjoyable, right? Everything we often hear about, heaven and hell and all these other things, they're all assumptions. Don't assume that you'll have another life. Live this life as best as you can and enjoy yourself. Have as much happiness and joy. At the end of your life, no one says, like, wow, I had 24 houses, or no one says, wow, I have all this money in a bank account. So my message has always been, and my work has always been dedicated to helping people achieve a life where they experience happiness, peace, love, abundance, and all of that, no matter what's going on around you. Life, like my grandmother always said, life is like the weather. You're going to have storms, you're going to have tornadoes, you're going to have sunny days, you're going to have rainy days. But if you can attain having peace and happiness within you truly, and you're really peaceful and happy, you're going to be happy whether it rains or whether there's a tornado. And that's always been my attitude. My attitude has always been that, like, if I cannot do anything about something, I'm not going to worry about it, because worrying about it isn't going to fix it, and it's only going to make me have a negative experience. And if I can do something, then I'll do something about a problem or situation. So my whole thing has always also been, like, not to allow everything to control you, right? If you are your own master, and you are your own master, no matter what happens, no one can upset you. No one can take your happiness away. If, everything that happens, if Joe gets angry at you and he took away your happiness, then that means to me that Joe is your master. Anything that can control you that much is your master instead of you. So my teachings have always been about having true mastery so that you actually are able to enjoy your life.
Thank you. We adore you and we love you a lot. Thank you for this, Hector. I really appreciate that you say yes to me again. I really appreciate this. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your knowledge. I really appreciate your work. Thank you for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate all of this that you take the time because I know that you're a very busy person and you have a new book in the market and you anyway take the time to make this talk with me. Thank you for that. Thank you everyone for watching this. Remember that the new book of my friend Hector Salva is available everywhere books and ebooks are sold. You will find every one of the links to his book, website, Facebook, and Instagram in the description of here below in the video. Thank you everyone and have a good night.